Hi everyone, this is my presentation for JCon 2020, our research slides. To start off, my research presentation is on social media usage and how it affects marketing and business marketing. So my PowerPoint slides and graphs are going to go over the research done on social media at a personal and business marketing level. Ultimately, I was just trying to see how your personal usage affects marketing usage. So to start off, we have question one, which is for a personal level, personal use. Thinking about the social media sites you use, how often do you visit and use each site? So these first two graphs are going over Twitter and Instagram. Now, Instagram is used more often, several times a day, but about once a day and a few days a week, they're very similar. And then Twitter is less often, and every few weeks is higher. So that kind of puts Instagram over Twitter, but they're fairly close to each other. To go over the next two is Pinterest and LinkedIn. Now, they're fairly similar in the several times a day, about once a day. These two sites aren't gone to quite as often as the other two, but you can see that LinkedIn does get more visits about every few weeks or every few months, right? So LinkedIn is higher than Pinterest, but not by much. But then we see our Facebook as our last graph, and Facebook is by far the most used site. We can see a very distinct trend of people using Facebook several times a day, or at least once a day, and it going down from there. And a lot of people do not use Facebook less frequently than the other sites. And so that kind of puts Facebook as our highest frequented site. And then we go Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. To go off of the Facebook site, again, for personal use, how often, if ever, do you share posts or comment on Facebook as opposed to just reading/viewing content? So this is just kind of showing that people are kind of in the middle when it comes to sharing, posting, or commenting, basically interacting on Facebook. I'm sure it depends a lot on content that is provided on the site, but very few people never comment, post, or share on Facebook. So a lot of people do interact on this site. Now to switch over to a business side, for businesses, do you employ social media in your marketing program? Majority of businesses will use social media rather than just having, say, a business site that people can go to. They have a bunch of social media that they are interacting with, right? And then to go continue off of that, if yes, do you manage social media marketing internally or out externally? Most businesses will hire internally to manage their social media marketing. This kind of shows the consumer that most of the time, if they're interacting on a social media site, they are communicating with a person from the company rather than, say, a marketing business that solely produces money based off the marketing strategies that they put out for specific businesses. To go off of the business use for social media, what social networks/outlets do you employ? Now, this is kind of interesting that LinkedIn is their highest, but I think that is mostly because they use LinkedIn to hire rather than necessarily post on it consistently. But we can see that Facebook is still one of our highest sites that they use, right? And then there's Twitter, and Instagram is significantly lower. Then to go into the next one, have you utilized paid advertising on the following networks? Now, most businesses do not pay for advertising. Basically, this is like a post boost that you can see on Facebook, you know, when you look at it and it goes, this post is sponsored, right? They paid for advertising on that social media site. Most businesses don't use them, so they rely solely on people interacting within their site rather than promoting it. But we can see that Facebook is the highest in paid advertising. So if a business was to use a paid advertising, most likely they would use it in Facebook. Now to switch back over into personal use, would online visibility of a business affect your purchase? And 55% of consumers would say yes, it does affect their purchase. And so even though it is 50-50, or close to 50-50, it's important for businesses to have social media and promote themselves on a social site. And to follow off of another personal usage, do you follow businesses on social media? A majority of people would say yes. This just kind of shows that consumers do want to interact with their businesses on a social level and communicate with them personally through a social media site. And our last question, how likely are you to share your experience with a business on social media? Most people are somewhat unlikely, and then unlikely, and very few are very likely. Even though most people are not willing to share experiences, you know, we tend to see the trend of, if people do share an experience, it is either a significantly good experience or a really bad experience, right? And so we tend to get those two polar opposites on our sites of experience from people. So those very likely people are the ones that will probably share an experience no matter what they felt, but your somewhat unlikely people are the ones that are only going to share the experiences that are kind of the polar extremes. So just to kind of wrap up my results from this, Facebook was the highest used media channel and was used most often in a personal level, right? And as we could sort of see, companies tend to use that channel just because people personally use it. People are more likely to interact, comment, or share with people's accounts rather than personal accounts rather than businesses. You know, they don't share their experiences with businesses that often, but people are somewhat likely to interact on, say, Facebook by comment, liking, sharing, being interactive. Most companies use social media, and most of them hire internally for these channels. This is important to recognize because we can see a trend that most companies will use people within the company to manage these social sites, which means that when you're interacting with the company on their site, most likely you're interacting with someone within the business rather than someone they hired out to do it. Companies tend to use Facebook and LinkedIn most often, and they also use paid advertising there most often as well. Facebook is obviously the highest for personal usage, and so it's important that companies also use that as a high end for paid advertising and also for using it. Again, like I covered previously, I think LinkedIn is mostly because they hire off of that site, but I also know that a lot of people do communicate and post and will check in on a business based off of their LinkedIn profile rather than necessarily, say, their Facebook or Instagram. But it's very important to recognize that companies are not utilizing Instagram as much as their consumers are. Consumers are using Instagram quite often compared to the companies that and businesses that we tend to follow, right? But I think something with that as well is that it's mostly photos and it doesn't allow businesses to truly interact with their consumers quite as much as Facebook does. But based off of that, that is something that businesses could utilize more and that we as consumers kind of appreciate. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this presentation and the slides that I was able to present. I'm going to stop sharing. I hope you all have a great rest of your semester and best of luck with your finals.